back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping it sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's going well here on this Monday, 16th day of August. My favorite month of the year. Hope you all had a great week and had a great day wherever you may be, whatever you may be doing. My favorite month of the year seemingly flies right by before us, but hey, still plenty left to go, plenty left to talk about in this thing we call summer here. Still a lot to get to because we're in the midst of the baseball season. NFL is about to get going, get started here, but there is one reoccurring thing that has been on my mind for weeks. There is one thing that seemingly just won't disappear. And it's been, quite frankly, a hindrance. It's been annoying to have to talk about as a fan of this team. But that is, of course, the reoccurring drama that exists between the Brooklyn Nets and their star, what should be the face of their franchise, Kevin Durant, who, as we all know, for the better part of the last 2 months now, has wanted to be traded from the Brooklyn Nets. And oh, what a surprise that is, because kind of become the story of Kevin's career. As great a player as he is, always looking for that next destination, always looking for that next spot, always looking for the grass being greener on the other side. And you had hoped that things had kind of calmed down. Things have kind of dissipated because it had been, about a month since we had heard anything on this front. It had been about a month since we had heard any talks because, no teams were willing to offer the Brooklyn Nets the level of package that they wanted. I mean, the last thing we had heard was about the Boston Celtics potentially being involved and them wanting to build a package around Jaylen Brown and Derek White Jr. And the Nets looked at them and said, no. It's going to take more than Jaylen Brown and White Jr. and just a couple of draft picks. I don't know how true these were. There were some reports out there suggesting that they wanted the likes of both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in a trade. But it would not have surprised me if they had looked at the Boston Celtics and said, hey, this is our best guy. We want Jaylen Brown. We want Marcus Smart, and we want Robert Williams III, along with at least 3 first-round draft picks. And you couldn't blame the Nets if that's what they're asking for, if that's the kind of package they want albeit he's 34, for one of the best players in this sport, a true game changer. Well, over the weekend, Shams Charania of The Athletic broke even more news, or should I say the previous weekend, because this came out as soon as I got done recording last week's podcast. And quite frankly, thank God I did, because I probably would have broken the microphone, probably would have, broken the glass here with how loud I would have yelled, how annoyed I would have been at reading this report. That about 10 days ago, Kevin Durant met with Nets owner Joe Tsai in London, and Joe Tsai was trying to smooth things out, trying to see what he could do to get Kevin to change his mind. And in that meeting, Kevin reiterated his desire to be traded and informed Joe Tsai that he needs to choose between Kevin or the pairing of general manager Sean Marks and head coach Steve Nash. Essentially saying either trade me or fire them. And to that I say, are you freaking kidding me, Kevin Durant? Are you out of your damn mind thinking that, it's going to be a you or the GM and the head coach thing? Considering up until now, the Nets have given Kevin Durant every last thing he wanted. They have kissed his ass since the moment he told them on July 6th, 2019, I'm coming to Brooklyn. And we knew that we weren't going to see Durant for the first season as he was recovering from the torn Achilles in the finals. But from that moment on, when he became the face of this franchise, they have bent over backwards, giving him every last thing that he wanted. They signed Kyrie Irving, who, as talented as he is, everyone knows what kind of pain in the ass he can be when it comes with coaches, and how sometimes his focus is not 100% on playing basketball. He has other things that he prioritizes as much, sometimes even more, than his actual job. And not just they signed Kyrie Irving, they added DeAndre Jordan on a 4-year, $40 million contract, a contract that no one in their right mind was going to give DeAndre Jordan, considering they saw the slippage in performance in previous seasons. He hadn't been as strong a defender and as strong a rebounder as he had been previously. Because everyone knew DeAndre Jordan's game was never about scoring, even though he could jump out of the gym with the best of them. It was about rim protecting, and it was about rebounding. And those had began to slip. Why, after 2 years, the Nets were willing to move on. Hell, in the second season of DeAndre Jordan's contract, they were already benching him. He was essentially just like a team dad for this roster. In March of 2020, a week before the season shut down due to the pandemic, they parted ways with Kenny Atkinson, and we all knew what that was because of Kevin Durant never played for Kenny Atkinson, but his buddy Kyrie Irving, who he follows around like a lapdog, told him that, he didn't like Kenny's coaching style. He didn't like how hard Kenny was coaching them. So he got him fired. They put it nicely, saying there was a mutual agreement to part ways, but Kenny Atkinson was fired. Let's face it. And because Durant and Irving said they didn't like being coached hard, they gave in to their requests and gave them a head coach that wasn't going to push them, gave them a head coach that was not going to be a pain in the ass to them 100% of the time. And that's why they hired Steve Nash, who had no coaching experience, had never even been on the bench as an assistant with a clipboard in any level of basketball, albeit one of the great players in the history of this sport, had no idea how to manage a roster, manage egos in a locker room, especially with guys that these weren't young players. These were guys that were his peers. These were guys that a couple years prior to this, he was in the heat of competition with. And now he was required to, by title only, be their superior. Then you have the whole Kyrie Irving nonsense where he takes off, and we didn't hear from him after January 6th. He just said, oh, I'm not capable of playing right now. And there's been a lot of he said, she said stories about what really went on there, whether it was really about January 6th or if he used that as an excuse just to take time off to go to family parties. And the full extent of that was that 2 weeks off or time away was for the family parties and so that he could re-quarantine before rejoining this team. And because of that, it finally forced Nets front office hand into trading for James Harden, a deal that I don't think they wanted to do, a deal that they gave up a lot of the pieces that helped them get back to respectability, pieces that would have been really useful on this team in the last 2 years. Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, all the draft picks that they have given up from here to 2027 to the Houston Rockets. And what did that lead to? It led to one playoff series win for that group together before all of the nonsense that happened this year where Kyrie Irving only played 29 games due to New York City's COVID-19 vaccination rules. And as much as it annoyed me that he wasn't playing, I even said that the rule was stupid, that if home players shouldn't be allowed to play, road players shouldn't be allowed to play here either, that are unvaccinated. But hey, it was his choice. It was a personal choice that he decided to make. For whatever reasons Kyrie Irving decided on a given day to make those choices, it's up for you all to debate, all of you to decide. But no, that caused James Harden to become very disgruntled. That caused James Harden to force his way out once he saw the Nets go on about face and cave into Kyrie Irving, allowing him to play in road games up until the rule was lifted by Mayor Eric Adams in the middle of March. And that led them trading James Harden to the 76ers for Ben Simmons, amongst others. And Ben Simmons has never even taken the court for this Brooklyn Nets team. And why are we sitting here today? It's not because of anything that General Manager Sean Marks has done, or really anything Steve Nash has done, because as I said, Steve Nash may be the coach, but that's in title only. Durant and Irving have run this team for the last 2 years. He's throwing this hissy fit now because of the fact that the Brooklyn Nets will not give his buddy Kyrie Irving a long-term contract extension, or won't do a deal to Kyrie's liking. He wants the full max deal for 4 years, while the Nets want to go shorter term, big money per year, but have clauses in there requiring Kyrie Irving to do this concept. It's actually a very interesting concept. It's called show up, play, and do your goddamn job. And that's something that Kyrie Irving seemingly thinks is a rule that's made for everybody else but him. Name one other walk of life that you can choose not to go to work and still demand a pay raise, still demand the contract of your choosing, and still think that your boss should have to kiss your damn ass. These guys have got to be out of their damn minds. As I said, they have kissed Durant's ass all the way here. They've done everything he's wanted up until now. And just because, they won't cave into Kyrie Irving's contract requests, now he wants out. And here's the funny thing with these trade requests that all along have had me looking at Durant like, are you some big moron? He expects to be traded to either Phoenix, Miami, Toronto, possibly Boston. Hell, you even heard the Sixers names thrown in here over the last week or so. And it to be done so without that team giving up major assets, with that team keeping its core nucleus of its roster intact and just adding him to the puzzle. Essentially acting like this is MLB 2K, the video game, where you could just take a player off a roster and pluck him onto your favorite team in edit roster mode. Doesn't work like that, Kevin. Sorry. The Nets are going to get, if they're going to trade you, what they feel is a suitable package, not what's suitable for you to win a championship with that new team. And, you've seen the reports by Brian Windhorst suggesting that he may hold out. Do it. Dare you. Go hold out, because you won't get paid. The Nets are under no obligation to trade this guy. He's about to start a 4-year, $198 million contract that he signed a year ago last week. So, if they're going to trade him, they're going to get the best possible deal for their liking, not for his liking. And, like I said, no obligation to trade him. Force his hand. Call his bluff. Show the world once again what a big baby and an embarrassment that this guy is acting like. Because, when the book is written, all said and done in Kevin Durant's career, he's going to go down as one of the greatest players to ever play this sport. But he's also going to go down as one of the biggest crybabies, one of the biggest whiners and complainers in the history of the NBA. And it's reason, I've said it before, people, I'll say it again. Buckle up. At the end of the 2023-2024 regular season, the NBA and NBA Players Association's collective bargaining agreement comes to an end. Unless there's some coming to Jesus moment for these players and they stop with this nonsense where they think that in the midst of long-term deals, they can constantly look for greener pasture elsewhere and try to demand and force trades, there's going to be a rather large lockout on our hands. And it's not going to be the owner's fault this time. It's going to be the players. All right, a lot left I want to get to over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Give you some thoughts on some things going on in baseball with a big suspension that came down on Friday, mixing some football as well, some stunning and possibly concerning news when it comes to Tom Brady, as well as an annoying thing that happened with yours truly's favorite football team over the weekend, and give you some final thoughts on the Derek Jeter documentary, The Captain. So plenty of things to get us through the afternoon here. As I say all the time, please sit back, relax, put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Welcome back to Keeping It Sports with M3. You know, another thing that had me annoyed, bothered, quite frankly, pissed off over this weekend was, of course, the continued poor, lackluster play of my New York Yankees. This past weekend continued what has been a trend for this team since the All-Star break, but really going back prior to that. I mean, you look at this, it's been over a month and a half now where they have been playing shitty baseball. They've been playing, about .330 ball here, should we say, and it continued this week with this awful road trip in which they went 2-7 on. After getting swept by the Cardinals, they would then go to both Seattle and Boston and lose 2 out of 3 there. And, I thought maybe there were chances of turnarounds. There were spots where you could look at this in the last week where you're saying, all right, maybe this team is about to start get going. They continued to tack on runs against the Mariners bullpen on Monday night and come away with a rather easy victory. And then on Tuesday, Garrett Cole matched Luis Castillo 0-for-0, bouncing back from his dreadful outing from the week prior. But the Yankees were never able to drive any run support across, and it turned into a very long, very annoying 13-inning loss. And then Wednesday was what has been the true definition of a Yankee loss over the last month and a half, where they're not doing much offensively early. The opposition takes a lead. They come racing back, even get Aaron Judge's 45th home run of the season on Wednesday afternoon. And the next half inning, they give it right back. And what annoyed me about the next half inning is not the fact that they sent Nestor Cortez back out to the mound to pitch the 7th inning, because his pitch count was at a reasonable place at that point. What was annoying is who they brought in after Cortez. Because Albert Abreu is a guy that has been DFA'd twice this year. He's a guy that the Yankees traded away at the end of spring training to get Jose Trevino, and was on 2 other teams during this season prior to the Yankees reclaiming him off of waivers. And while he's had moments in non-pressure situations, we know that this guy throwing strikes are a very difficult thing for him. Meanwhile, you have a kid in Ron Marinaccio, who's been one of their best relievers all season, and because he was the only guy in the bullpen that had minor league options left, he was sent down last week because, we have to keep Abreu. We're so scared to death that potentially a division rival will claim him off waivers, and suddenly he'll become a strike thrower with his so-called nasty stuff. Your stuff is only nasty if you can command it and you're able to effectively throw it in the strike zone, not if you're walking people. And that was a crusher in that seventh inning there. Just when the Yankees seemingly had all the momentum, he gave it right back with a disheartening loss there. And then over the weekend, you go and play a Red Sox team who coming into that weekend was 1-10-1 against the American League East this year. That one series victory they had was a makeup game from the first week of the season being wiped out. They played one game against the Baltimore Orioles down at Camden Yards. And winning that gave them their first series victory against an American League East opponent this year. Well, guess what? They got their second one this weekend. And quite frankly, they should have swept the Yankees over the weekend, because you saw more of the same problems. Friday night, not able to tack on runs late, and still can't figure it out. But Clay Holmes can't throw strikes right now. He can't get through an inning without giving up a run. He is a total mess compared to the lights out phenomenon he was in the first half of the season. Saturday night, you're trailing through 6 innings, and then a miracle happens when Isaiah Kiner-Falefa hits his first home run of the season, 2-run shot into the first row of the monster to tie up the game, and then drives in the go-ahead run in the bottom half of the inning on a squeeze play, but they still could have lost in the 9th inning because the Red Sox are roping singles all over the place against Effenross, and the Yankees got very lucky with some light contact by both Devers and Bogarts to come away and survive. And then last night was a total snooze fest. It was absolutely boring baseball to watch. When have we ever seen a Yankee-Red Sox game end at 9:30 at night? I mean, unless the game started at 5 o'clock, Yankees-Red Sox at 9:30 at night, you're expecting to still be in the 5th inning. But they were in the 5th inning by about 8 o'clock last night. Both of these teams have felt like had dinner reservations, especially the Yankees. And you're seeing no heart, no life out of this team. It's the same old nonsense day after day. Oh, we'll be fine. Everything's okay. We're going to get going. I think the only thing that's saving their asses right now is the fact that they got off to such a great start in the first half of this season. The fact that they, for the first 2.5 months of the season, were the best team in baseball. Were coming back, winning games in remarkable fashion, Judge with all the walk-off home runs and everything. But now, they seemingly can't get out of their own way, whether it be the fact that the bullpen's a mess. You have no Michael King, no Chad Green. You don't know what you're getting out of Jonathan Loaisiga on a night in, night out basis. Chapman has started to pitch better, but doesn't look like they're ready to hand him the closer spot. And the Yankees really don't have a closer right now with what's happened to Clay Holmes. And the fact that for the last month, outside of Judge, no one on this team is hitting. Judge is doing his part. He's carried this offense with the historic season he's had. But this lineup, all the way around, you look at them, nobody's hitting over 230 in the last month. And now we're already dealing with the injury issues to Giancarlo Stanton. The fact that Rizzo's back seems to be on a week-in, week-out basis some kind of issue. And now with LeMahieu dealing with this toe thing that you just pray is not a big deal. The Yankees are slowly but surely falling apart. The only thing that saves them, like I said, the great start that they've gotten off to, and the fact that no one in the American League East has taken advantage of the opportunity presented before them. And we're sitting here on August 15th, even with how bad the Yankees have played, and they still have a double-digit lead over everybody in the division. But that could disappear very quickly. Look at the 9-game homestand that they're about to play here, or the next 9 games that they're about to play. 3 against the Rays, 4 against the Toronto Blue Jays, who are their closest competitor in the East, and then 2 against the Mets, who have been the better team in New York over the last month. I mean, look at them. Since the All-Star break, they're 17-5. They have been, dominating the competition, whether it's good teams like the Braves or some of the mediocre middle-of-the-pack squads that they've been facing recently. And they're not doing it by waiting for the long ball. They're just, consistently putting good at-bats together. That and the fact that they're getting great starting pitching, including with DeGrom coming back in 3 consecutive great starts. So it's really been a tale of 2 cities since the All-Star break. The Yankees, you no longer look at them as the favorite or the best team in baseball. The best 2 teams in baseball right now reside in the National League with the Mets and, of course, probably the best team in the sport, the Los Angeles Dodgers, who just ended a 12-game winning streak yesterday. A winning streak in which they won all those games by multiple runs, had this insane plus 60 run differential. And you look at some of the things that happened during that streak, the 2 guys in their lineup that had been total non-factors throughout this season started to come alive. Muncy was a man possessed over the last 12 games, and Bellinger has even started to show that he wanted to participate a little bit. But even on top of that, they're still without what you expected to be their best 2 starting pitchers coming into this season, with Kershaw and Buehler on the IL. But Urias and Gonsolin have picked up the slack there. Especially, Gonsolin, it looked like Cinderella's carriage was about to turn back into the pumpkin for Gonsolin. He had struggled in the month of July, pitching to a ERA of about 4.5, and now over the last 2 starts during this winning streak, had really started to get going again and looked like the guy that was in consideration to start the All-Star game. So, like I said, right now, the best 2 teams in the sport reside on opposite coasts, and they're not in the American League. It's with the Dodgers in the West and the Mets here in the East. Now, there was one big concerning thing that happened for a team in the West this week, and that, quite frankly, was the biggest story in baseball, one of the biggest stories in sports, and that kind of took me aback at first when I saw this on Friday, but quite frankly, we should not be surprised anymore when this happens. And that was San Diego Padres young star Fernando Tatis Jr. failing a PED test and getting an 80-game suspension. And at first I'm looking at him like, are you freaking kidding me? The guy hasn't played all year due to injuries in the offseason that could have been prevented, but he kept getting into motorcycle accidents, leading to him having to have wrist surgery back in March. And now he gets suspended for testing positive for an anabolic steroid known as clystebol, that in his press release where he, as most of these guys try to do, apologize, he claims that he was taking clystebol to treat ringworm, but many well-noted doctors across the country have already come out and called BS on that excuse. And how stupid can you be? I mean, for the last year, quite frankly, if you're a Padres fan, if you're a member of that front office, you're looking at this kid and you're saying, what the hell is wrong with you? First, the motorcycle crap, which you shouldn't be doing in the first place, and now this. That's why I said from the beginning, when he signed that 14-year, $340 million contract with the Padres before the 2021 season, that was a smart investment on both sides. From the Padres, because with how talented we see that he is and could be, you get him probably at a discounted price compared to what either them or somebody else is going to have to pay on Juan Soto. And for him, being 21, 22 years of age at the time of the signing, you're guaranteeing yourself $340 million when we know in sports, health is not guaranteed. The future is not guaranteed. We've seen plenty of stars that we thought were going to get those big record-setting paydays and never reached there. I keep going back to it. Grady Sizemore never got to that big payday. Jose Fernandez, unfortunately, because of poor decision-making costing him his life, never got to that big payday. Probably would have gotten a record-setting contract, being that he was going to be 26 at the time of free agency. So you just never know. But the Padres, we were expecting big things out of this team. They pushed all their chips to the center of the table and made the deal to go get Juan Soto, to add to Manny Machado, add to what looks like a pretty good pitching staff, add to what you hoped was going to be Fernando Tatis Jr. And you saw the disappointment of his teammates over the weekend. Hell, Mike Clevenger and Manny Machado really came out strong against him with some of their post-game comments on Friday night. But now he's out for the remaining 47 games of this season after missing this weekend, and out for the first 30 games of next year, as well as ineligible for this year's postseason. It's time for Fernando Tatis to grow the hell up. It's time for him to act like a professional and realize that, yeah, you've got the big payday, but you've also got potentially your entire career ahead of you, and don't want to waste that by continuing to do stupid things. So hopefully this is a wake-up call for him. And, I know people don't like the guy, but quite frankly, he should call Alex Rodriguez. He should call A-Rod and get some pointers from him on how to try to repair your image now after an entire year of utter and complete stupidity. All right, going to take another break here, come back, turn my attention to the NFL. And boy, do I have some thoughts there. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
The media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere, on air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with locations up and down the East Coast, from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools, redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-radio.
I'll be back.
Welcome back to Keeping It Sports and the Monday afternoon show. Well, let's continue what has been kind of a growing trend this week and talk about things that quite frankly had me annoyed, had me bothered. And that, of course, was what happened on Friday night in the Jets preseason game, the opening of their preseason schedule against the Philadelphia Eagles. And typically, I don't take much out of preseason games. I saw late in the evening that they had come back and won the game, and I really didn't care because I was already bothered and aggravated by things that I watched. And typically, the first preseason game, I'll only watch the first quarter because that's about the gist of it, that the starters will play. And first you have the annoying late hit penalty by Quincy Williams that led to the Eagles drive getting extended when he drilled Jalen Hurts as he was running out of bounds. I mean, that was just a brain-dead, clueless moment by Williams. But what bothered me even more than that, even more than the first team defense getting picked apart, which, let's be fair, there were some veteran members of that team that weren't even playing, like John Franklin Myers, like Carl Lawson. They were missing Reed and Joyner as well. What really annoyed me and had me leave that game disheartened was the injury to Zach Wilson. The fact that you see this kid initially limping off the field before sitting back down, and while he didn't have to be carried off, he was walking rather gingerly back to the locker room. And this comes on a non-contact play where he's trying to rush up the middle to gain extra yards where he clearly should have ran out of bounds. But you see him take an awkward step as he's diving forward, and that never results well for people. And I'm just left sitting there. I'm like, why us? Why can't we potentially have nice things? Because I saw people screaming and complaining about this after the game on Twitter, saying, "Oh, it's the preseason. Why was he playing?" I'm like, he's a second-year quarterback. He needs to get as many reps as possible. This is not, Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, where they can wake up, miss the entire training camp or preseason, and wake up 2 days before the regular season and be ready to go. This is a young kid who, while he has a lot of promise, a lot of potential, still needs to show that he can live up to that. Still needs to show that he can overcome some of the things that ailed him last year, whether it be the physical things and not handling short yardage completions, or it be the mental things as far as decision making. Whether it's throwing it over a tight end's head or eyeing down a receiver that led to an interception on his first drive. Or, like we said, running up the middle like that, instead of sliding feet first, he's diving and not going out of bounds on the play. Now, I thought the absolute worst had happened when this happened, but on Saturday morning, we get the news that it's a bone bruise and a meniscus tear that he will have arthroscopic surgery on in California tomorrow. And while right now you feel like, they've avoided a catastrophe, we're still not completely out of the water based on whatever they see when they go in for the surgery tomorrow, and that's going to determine the recovery timeline. Let's say they go in there tomorrow and they see something even worse than they initially thought, and he misses either all of or a large part of this season. And then, quite frankly, you got to play Mike White at that point. I don't care how much Robert Saleh is talking up Joe Flacco, wanting to be nice, saying that Joe Flacco's still a starter in this league. That's bullshit. All right? If Joe Flacco was still a starter in this league, someone would have added him. Just like the Colts made the trade for Matt Ryan, or the Washington Commanders traded for Carson Wentz. Someone would have went after Joe Flacco if he was thought of to be an actual starter still in this league. This is not 24-year-old Joe Flacco. You gain nothing out of him being the starter on this team. Mike White, you still have a guy who's relatively young, still only 27 years of age. If Zach can't play this year, you go with Mike White and you see what you have in him. But the Jets are so scared to death that, Mike White might actually be good, and worried that it would look like a wasted investment using the second overall pick on Zach Wilson, that they don't want to even give him another shot at things. I mean, they used that game against Buffalo last year where he threw the 4 interceptions as their excuse, as their opportunity to bury him, when we know those interceptions all came when the game was already out of hand. So, as I said, the Jets would gain nothing if it's Flacco over White. But let's hope that these reports of it possibly being a 2 to 4 week recovery time for Zach Wilson are true, so that he can get back out there sooner rather than later. Because the Jets are going nowhere until they get this quarterback position figured out for the long term. They have a good roster on paper, but a lot of that on paper is going to be decided whether this kid can actually play, or they're going to be looking for, once again, their potential quarterback of the future in next year's draft. And one team that thinks they have their long-term answer at quarterback is another one of the teams that was drafting in the first round of the 2021 draft, the New England Patriots. But you've seen a lot of confounding reports about their offense in training camp after what was a tale of two seasons with their offense, where they struggled in the first 6 games, and then the final 11 were the highest scoring team in the league, best when scoring in the red zone, and averaged about 150 rushing yards per game. Now there's all sorts of confusion because, as usual, Belichick, when a coordinator leaves him, refuses to immediately name a new coordinator at that spot. So you've had this kind of circle of trust, if you want to call it this, meeting of the minds of people running the Patriots offense. And what's weird about it is it's 2 former disciples of his coming back after failed attempts at being head coaches, running this offense in Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. And why that is so weird, especially with Matt Patricia's official title being the senior football advisor and offensive line coach, is Matt Patricia, when he was previously with the New England Patriots, was their defensive coordinator for 6 years. Defensive coordinator that helped them win multiple Super Bowls. Joe Judge, when he was last with the Patriots, he was the special teams coordinator. And now you have these 2 guys running the Patriots offense. This is the weirdest thing I've seen since 10 years ago, when Andy Reid named Juan Castillo their defensive coordinator after firing Sean McDermott. He names Juan Castillo the defensive coordinator. And remember, Castillo had, for the previous 13 years, been the Eagles' offensive line coach. So you have a guy go from offensive line coach to being defensive coordinator. And some of these coaches just don't think sometimes. I mean, taking two guys that have never coached offense in their life and making them essentially your co-offensive coordinators. No wonder their offense is struggling here in the preseason. But hey, I have no sympathy for them. Really don't. And had been long waiting for their offense to struggle since Tom Brady walked out the door. And now with Brady, you're starting to wonder what the hell is going on in not just his career, but his life. Because what he did this week, a little bit troubling if you ask me. He's taken some time away from the Buccaneers to deal with personal things. Now they're claiming that this was prearranged, that this was something they already knew about, that he'd be missing the first two preseason games at least, and would be back sometime after August 20th. But this is something definitely to watch, because think about this. Since he's returned, Gronkowski has officially retired. They've lost a Pro Bowl caliber center in Ryan Jensen for the year to a knee injury. You still are without weapons on that offense due to previous injuries from last season. And now Tom going into a year where he's just turned 45 years old, is he starting to re-question the decision to come back? And let's hope that there's nothing wrong with his family, nothing wrong with his parents, anything like that. But this is something that's got to be watched. This is something that we're going to have to pay attention to, not just now, but as the season goes on, because now he's without Jensen, so that's going to leave them dealing with more pressure up the middle. He's still without Godwin until who knows when. And we're still waiting to see if maybe one more time he could talk Rob Gronkowski out of retirement and come back to playing once again. So, gonna be interesting to watch with Tom Brady there. And what we also have to watch as far as quarterbacks are concerned, and the countdown is on. We are less than 27 days now from the first Sunday of the NFL season. And Lamar Jackson has now informed us all that he is cutting off contract negotiations by week 1 of the regular season, which I never understand this. Why players do this, cutting off negotiations at the end of preseason and saying, they will not negotiate again until after the season. All he has to do is go out there and play. All he has to do, go out there, practice, make sure he's healthy. He doesn't have to handle any of this. And this is why it comes off as kind of weird, kind of ridiculous for him not to have an agent, not having someone to represent him and sit there across from Ravens management to hash out a contract proposal. Now, from what you hear, they're still very much far apart when it comes to the guarantee money. I mean, the total worth of the contract, it sounds like they're pretty close, but it sounds like there's a margin that needs to be closed off when it comes to his expectations on guarantee money compared to what they are currently offering. And last year to me is just a wash for this guy. We've seen it so far in his career. When he plays, he's one of the best quarterbacks in this sport. When he plays, his teams win games. And he has shown that not only can he get his team to the playoffs, but he got over that demon 2 years ago of what some thought was the inability to win games in the playoffs. And this guy's a former MVP. He's been a Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro kind of player. Where else are you getting another quarterback like this? You've built your entire offense around him. And you don't have to think about 10, 15 years from now. You have to think about right now. And the right now says that for the next 5 to 6 years, Lamar Jackson gives the Ravens the best opportunity at winning games. And maybe he goes the Kirk Cousins route of continuously taking the franchise tag and then getting the big deal. But if I were the Baltimore Ravens, I would want to get this done as soon as possible. If I'm him, I want to get this done as soon as possible. With the way he plays and the fact that he dealt with so many injuries last year, maybe that shines some light on his mortality. And with the Ravens, you've gotten lucky the fact that you've been able to follow up Joe Flacco with Lamar Jackson. But look around at some other franchises in this sport. It's not so easy to find that franchise quarterback. And while you have them, you should be grateful to have them and make them happy and keep them protected for as long as possible. Gonna take one last break here. Come back on the other side. Finish up for Keeping It Sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Very wise, important, great decision was made by the NBA this past year. Because whenever someone of prominence, of true overall greatness passes away, whether it's they left us too early like the great Kobe Bryant, or someone that had a long life and a lasting impact on life. We're always looking for a way to honor them. We're always looking for a way to pay tribute to them so that their name can be remembered and honored forever. And I thought we had initially done that with naming the MVP of the NBA Finals a couple of years back after the great and now recently passed on legend that is Bill Russell. But the NBA has taken one step further this past week when they announced that Bill Russell will now become the first player in NBA history to have his jersey number retired league-wide, joining the likes in North American professional sports of Jackie Robinson with his number 42 retired, and the GOAT Wayne Gretzky having his number 99 retired in the NHL. Bill Russell, his number 6, will never be worn again. Now, there are about 25 players last year that wore the number 6, including the likes of LeBron James, Kristaps Porzingis, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, just to name a few. But the league has decided no more. After all of these players are done wearing the number 6, no one will ever wear the number 6 ever again in honor of the great player and even better man that Bill Russell was. And to commemorate him this year, players will wear a commemorative patch on their right shoulder on their jerseys, as well as every court will have a shamrock shaped logo with Russell's number 6 near the scorer's table, as well as the Celtics have already planned their own form of recognition for this unique but much well-deserved announcement. First of its kind in NBA history, and why not? This guy's the greatest winner in the history of this sport. Hell, probably the greatest winner in the history of North American sports when you take into what he not just did as a professional, but winning on both the college and high school levels, as well as winning a gold medal in the 56 Olympics. I think you just look at some of the things that he accomplished individually as a player. Second all time in rebounds and rebounds per game. The leading rebounder in postseason history. And on top of that, what he's done for civil rights in this country, not just for professional athletes, but for blacks in general. And he took a lot of the slings and arrows that Michael Jordan, for the large part, did not have to take. Things had started to calm down when Kareem was coming into the league, as well as them with MJ. LeBron, while there's still disgusting human beings out there, doesn't face the cruelty that this man faced back during his playing career. So a great way to honor a great player and an even greater man, if you ask me. Now, finish things up here. Of course, got to talk about part 7 of The Captain. Watch that this morning, and this series was awesome. This series was just amazing to go back down a trip through memory lane, reliving his entire playing career, all of the highlights and the few lowlights, 03 and 04, as well as the ending to 01. But also, finally, him letting us in. Because Derek Jeter was very protective of not just his image, but his personal life during his playing career. Even though we always saw his parents at the game, we really didn't know a lot about his upbringing, at least from him, unless, either his mother or father did interviews. And, you saw raw emotion coming out of Derek throughout this. One, finally admitting to the one regret he had, and that was the fact that as a player, he was always looking for what's next rather than just enjoying the moment. Rather than what was happening at that time. Whenever they won a championship, he was always looking to, right after the celebration, all right, what's next? How do we get to the next championship? Or when he reached all of these milestones, 3,000th hit, the all-time hit leader in the history of the New York Yankees, things like that. He didn't take the time to appreciate, enjoy those. He more so put pressure on himself to make sure that those achievements happened at home. And that's why every time one of those came up, 2,000 hits, 3,000 hits, the all-time hits leader in the history of this franchise, you would see him struggle for a couple of weeks leading up to that ultimate hit. And even the emotion in him in his final game, that final game at Yankee Stadium, might I say, that was the first time where he actually took a step back and enjoyed what was going on, because he didn't have to think about what's next. He just lived for that moment, and a moment that gave him the greatest blown save in the history of Major League Baseball when Dave Robertson gave up 2 home runs in the 9th inning. It prevented the Yankees from, kind of manufacturing and creating an ending where they're like, oh, do we pull Jeter off the field? Does he get a long standing ovation where the game gets stopped with him leaving the field at shortstop? And no. It ended with him having the storybook ending that, quite frankly, was fitting for his career. His life was a story. From coming out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, being drafted out of high school by his childhood team, the Yankees, playing the position that he always wanted. He went into detail talking about how it meant the world to him that he only played one position his entire career. And that he takes a lot of pride in that. He also takes, a lot of pride in his family. And, that's why he didn't want to start a family while he was still an active player. Because as, he said he would get a bit jealous of seeing teammates who had kids in their locker room, seeing how cool that was. He was 100% dedicated to his craft and didn't want to, take away from either of those. Didn't want to have to be choosing between family and his career. Thought he likes to go 100% at everything he does. And now, with him being retired for the last 6 years or 7 years, whatever it's been, he can be 100% committed to his family. And that also led to his fall apart as far as being part of Marlins ownership, because, they seem to have 2 different directions there. While, yeah, they had to break some things down and tear down the roster as far as making back up money, Derek ultimately left there because he didn't feel that Bruce Sherman and the rest of the organization shared his desire to build a true long-term winner and have long-term success. But a lot of things, I thought it was good that they put to bed a lot of things in the part 7 here. You have him revealing that he cleared the air with Brian Cashman prior to his Hall of Fame speech, saying he now realizes, why Cashman handled certain things during their negotiations in the way and the fashion that he did that. Or how he cleared the, seemed to clear the air with A-Rod and how they have a better relationship. Hell, you saw that on Sunday Night Baseball last night. He was in studio for the K-Rod broadcast. And while I don't think they're ever going to be best friends again, they seem to have a really good time being in each other's presence, seemed like pals, and seemed like everything from 2000 on to the end of their careers is water under the bridge now. But as a Yankee fan, I'm trying to hold back from crying talking about this because it was so great to watch this. It brought up so many great memories from my childhood, but it brought chills to my body when he talked about what is the most important thing he gets remembered for. And he said, that's being a Yankee. And to me, when I think of Derek Jeter now, and when, hopefully somewhere down the road I'm a parent and get to talk about him with my kids, got to find Mrs. M3 first. But hopefully when that day comes and they ask me, Dad, tell us about Derek Jeter, it's plain and simple when it comes to Jeets. He was the perfect Yankee. He was successful throughout his entire career. He was inspirational. He was what kids wanted to be like, not just as a player, but as a person. He was a great man with integrity that never cheated us on or off the field. Never was involved in PEDs, never half-assed it. Every time he was out there, even if he was injured, he gave it his all. Even played through some injuries in his career that probably came back to bite him at the very end there. And all the pressure that was mounted on top of this kid, because he was the top prospect in this organization. He was viewed back then the same way this franchise present day is viewing their young shortstop prospect Anthony Volpe. And I hope that kid watched this documentary. I hope Anthony Volpe watched this and saw how to handle the pressures of New York, how to handle being a Yankee. Because it's a tough act. It is very much a tough act to follow. And quite frankly, Jeter handled it to absolute perfection. And that, my friends, is Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, August 15th, 2022. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a great week, whatever you may be doing. Stay safe, have fun. And I'll talk to you all same time next week, when we will be just 1 week closer to the return of the NFL. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.